Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today, my guest is Craig Campobasso. Before I bring him on, just a couple of announcements. I'm currently on a little road trip for a couple of weeks, passing through Southern California at the moment, but I will still be doing as many shows as possible while on the go while traveling. Of course, you can always get new episodes free on Rokfin, Odysee, and all podcast platforms. Go check us out on Rokfin. That's where you get our premium content, regular shows, and best of all the amazing content from every creator on Rokfin. Check out all the podcasts that we feature on the Forbidden Knowledge Network. You can get all those on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. Also follow us on Facebook. Those links are all in the description. You can follow us there for show announcements, updates, and any important information. Check out C60 Purple Power. This may be the most powerful antioxidant known to man. I have personally experienced many amazing benefits, but you need to check it out for yourself. See what they can do for you. Just click that link in the description. You get 10% off your order plus free shipping. Today, I want to welcome back to the show Craig Campobasso. He is a multiple award-winning filmmaker and Emmy-nominated casting director. He was 15 when he started in the entertainment business. He directed, wrote, and produced the short film Stranger at the Pentagon, which was adapted from the popular UFO book authored by the late Dr. Frank E. Stranges. His latest best-selling book, The Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, The Ultimate Guide to Greys, Reptilians, Hybrids, and Nordics, was released on January 1st, 2021. And his next untitled book from MUFON Books is due out in October of 2022. Craig, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm great, man. It's great to have you back on.
I'm very happy to be back on.
Yeah, man, it's been a little while. I think it's been over a year.
Yes.
Last time we discussed your book, the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, and now you're working on a documentary. You have another book coming out in 2022. Man, we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about.
Yes.
But for those who really aren't familiar with you or may not have seen your last appearance, could you let the audience know what lets you down the path of extraterrestrials and high strangeness?
There's always a story. I love hearing the stories of everybody, right?
Yeah.
Mine happened when I was 26 years old. I was actually working on Steven Spielberg's Amazing Stories back in the 80s. And when the show ended is when I say my own amazing story began, because that's when I had this immense spiritual awakening to the universe. And it was so deep, and there was a 2-year waking process from never thinking about what's out there, what's up there, anything like that, living my normal humdrum life of as I sort of say, non-aware person, right? To going to, oh my God, look at all of this stuff, right? So that's how my story began, and I immediately sort of lived. At that time, we had the Bodhi tree. It was very famous, and lots of movies and stuff. It was in Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb, and all these things where people would go in there and books would fall off the shelf, and that was meant for them to read, and little things like that. And the last time I walked into the Bodhi tree before it closed, I always immediately went to the UFO section to see what was there. And I found a great treasure. I found the last autographed book by Betty Hill of her last book that she wrote.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
right there.
That's
that
really
was
cool.
Amazingly cool. And of course, now I'm good friends with her niece, Kathleen Martin. So anyway, I just delved into reading all kinds of material. I started especially doing a deep dive into all the contactees. I especially was drawn to the early contactees because they were having face-to-face contact with human extraterrestrials. There wasn't a gray in sight in those early days, although that they were visiting and there were stories, but they weren't in sort of the mainstream UFO consciousness, right? Then I started going to conferences. I started meeting all the ufologists. I started meeting all the MUFON directors and things like that. And so I started going on investigations just out of curiosity and seeing all this stuff. So that was one of the reasons why they chose me to actually write this book, was because of all of my back history of over 30 years of diving deep into all these cases. So the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac is a compilation of a lot of these stories that have not even been in the public's eye for a very, very long time, and people wouldn't even know where to get it because these books are out of print. Or if you find one, it's on Amazon for $1,500.
Yeah.
You know, so, and who's going to buy that? Somebody, some rich person might, but not me. So what I did is then I went either directly to the contactees or directly to the publishers, obtain the rights to sort of rehash what it was that went into the fine points of what my publisher wanted. I also even went out further onto a limb, just being, you know, in this community a very long time. I know a lot of hybrids, right? And so I went to specific hybrids to learn about their ET culture. And what I found was, and I knew most of them, but I didn't know the stuff that they knew, or that they could speak the language of that star world, right? So they, you know, they would speak it for me so I could understand it. But I do meet a lot of people because I've been doing this a very long time. I have 7 books out now in total. And so I have met star kids who speak languages from somewhere else. I met one boy who spoke 5-star languages. He was drawing star maps. Him and his brother built machines, and their parents bought them all of this stuff. They had one giant room and they would build all this stuff, and they say, you know, when I get older, this machine is going to help the earth because this is what it's going to do. And when and you know what? I believed them, you know, because it's like they're already super smart. They're already doing these types of things, right? So anyway, it's that's sort of what led me down the path. And yeah, I try and live my life like the motto, life is like a parachute, or consciousness is like a parachute. It only works when it's open.
Right.
Albert Einstein.
Yeah, that's a good one. Now, whenever you first started looking at this stuff versus now, do you have a different understanding of extraterrestrials in general and the phenomenon and the connections between all of these things like consciousness and paranormal activity? Do you have any different understanding of what it all means and how it connects, and, you know, what could be behind the phenomenon?
Okay, that's a long one, but I'll try and answer it to the best of my knowledge of how I understand it. Just tell me the first part of it again.
I'm just wondering, you know, based on when you first started looking into this phenomenon versus now, do you have a different understanding of it?
Yes.
Do you see extraterrestrials differently than you used to?
Well, when I first got into this, I never thought about extraterrestrials. I saw them in the movies and I thought that's where they existed, right? I never thought about them being from anywhere else but in the movies.
Mm.
But when I started going into them and hearing the different people's contacts and start to read all of the imparted knowledge that was coming from these star beings, it was all highly spiritual information to elevate consciousness, right? And that's primarily everything that I learned in the beginning. And then as I started to delve into the more negative sides and things like that, I started learning shapes and plans of more nefarious races and how they sort of secretly overtake planets, and they use it for its resources, they use it for everything. And I just thought, what an interesting concept that a race could be that smart to come into a world and rule it without anyone knowing, right?
Yeah.
And that is not so far-fetched, honestly. I mean, if we look at our world, which is in a state of constant chaos, right? And that kind of thing. And then when you really start to dig deep and you really start to see, we're not going to get into all of those sort of things because people can really learn about all of that online, but it starts, you start to see a whole bigger picture. And then what people who are awake and aware, what they say to me is, well, how can I help? And I say, what we are is we're here to help raise consciousness, right? We're all here to raise our own consciousness. And in so doing, we raise the planet's consciousness. Now we're going to take it a step further into when I was awoken at age 26. A big part of that was due to master teachers, which I call universal master teachers, who put me through a 2-year process of waking and then said it was time to write a set of books. And those books right now are 4 books that called The Autobiography of an Extraterrestrial Saga. And the most interesting thing about these books is that I read them. I didn't write them. It's a higher form of channeling because it came through from these masters, right? So the lead character's name is Tehran. He's a 7'7" Pleiadian. He is a senior instructor at the University of Melchizedek. And what he does is he instructs star seeds that are coming into Earth to raise consciousness, right? He also instructs mighty messengers, which are advanced star seeds that come into Earth with a more global mission to raise consciousness globally, where the individual star seed raises consciousness individually, right? But the most interesting enigma about this is Tehran was born dualistic, like everyone here on Earth is dualistic, because every 200,000 people born up there in a fully conscious world is born dualistic for 2 simple reasons. That dualistic being will have fully conscious beings to sort of bounce off of, and the fully conscious beings will stay understanding of what a dualistic being is because they don't deal with dualistic beings on a day-to-day basis. So interestingly enough, he is placed in this position perfectly because he is dualistic, who is sending fully conscious beings to learn how to be dualistic once they get down here, and everything where they're going to be. Are they going to be male, female? What's their goal? What's their long stride to raise consciousness, and so forth. And during the course of the books, there'll be 7 in total. I'm writing the 5th one right now. And is that the reader becomes Tehran, the lead character, and you learn how to elevate your consciousness and become fully conscious right along with him. Right? So there's the second part of your question. Yeah.
Wow. Very good. Now, I want to go back to what you were saying that was very interesting earlier. You said you had actually interviewed and spoke with some hybrids.
Yes.
First of all, how did you find them, and how did you know that they were what they claimed to be?
So I've met them throughout the years, either through UFO conferences or through other friends or things of that nature. And one that I met, a friend of mine who's a documentary filmmaker as well, said, I just met the most amazing woman who says she is an Arcturian hybrid. And it was the most unbelievable experience I ever had. I don't want to tell you about it. I just want you to experience it. So anyway, I went to see this woman, and as I was sitting there, she was just explaining that she was an Arcturian hybrid, and that when the embryo was in her mother, that the Arcturians injected DNA into the embryo. And I want people to understand that fully conscious beings are tech gods of hybridization, of DNA, of those kind of things. They're not going to remove the traits that are between the mother and father and how she would look. Mm-hmm. They're going to enhance the traits to bring her spiritual vibration quicker up the ladder, and for her to connect with that star world and start channeling through the information, right? So this is how she explains it. And then so I went to see her, and she just said, at a certain point, as I'm talking with you, your soul will be taken up on the Arcturian ship, and you will experience what you were meant to experience. Of course, me, and I'm sure a lot of people out there listening, I was like, okay, I know a lot of people have been on craft astrally and that kind of thing. And of course, my mind, the dualistic mind is meant to be set up to go, yeah, right, right, until it's proven. And then you kind of go a little bit to the other way. So, okay, I might believe a little bit. But as I'm sitting there with her, she's talking to me, and then for some reason I just closed my eyes and I went boom, 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 like this. I felt my energy elevate. It wasn't that I knew I was on a ship. I was just somewhere very high interdimensionally, right? And then all of a sudden it went boom, 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 and I was back in my body. And when I opened my eyes, everything was gold. Everything was going like this. Vroom, 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 vroom. Gold. It was all different shades of gold with each vroom. And my whole body felt like it weighed like a feather. Right? So I said, I think she's the real deal. And so I interviewed her for the Arcturians here. And I also interviewed her for the documentary, where she can talk and tell a little bit more about what it is to be an Arcturian hybrid.
That's pretty amazing. What you said about how you kind of went to a different, I guess I think it's more of a frequency thing. Your body maybe just changes frequencies to where you can perceive these other dimensions, right?
Right. And when you're there, you're getting some form of a download,
Mhm.
right? You know, downloads work in this way, that depending on your spiritual vibration, a download will come in and it will only assimilate or dissimilate the information into your consciousness for as much as you can handle. So if you are a young student, that information might be released in your consciousness over a period of 2 to 3 years. If you are more advanced, it might just be a few months. It could be overnight. It could be whichever way, shape, or form. And what I want people to understand is it also comes in the form of intuition, right?
Right.
That you have to remember that in the fully conscious worlds, they do not tell you what is right and what is wrong. Everything is about your own personal experience. So everyone is left to have their own personal experience. They can give you a suggestion in your mind consciously, right, through a download, and it is up to you to execute it. Because remember, the tier of thought is threefold. We have a thought. We think on that thought. Are we going to create it or destroy it? And then if we create that thought and it's positive, we'll reap dharma. If we create that thought into a negative act, we create karma, and we continue on that karmic path, hurting and affecting as many people as it interacts with. And you, the responsible party, are responsible for all the little offshoots, right?
Yeah.
So I think when I heard that from my master teachers way back when, I went, oh my God, I never thought of it like that. So I became more mindful of my thoughts.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
definitely.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
in your book, you have like I think it's 82 species of extraterrestrials that you talk about. I know we talked about this a bit last time, but how did you get the number of 82 species?
Well, the publisher wanted me to bring the book in under 300 pages. And so I immediately went, when I got the assignment, I immediately went to all the contactee cases, hybrid cases, all of that. And I wrote them all down, and I had well over 100. And I was like, okay, well, I know I can't fit that many in. They really just wanted thumbnail reviews of of the book, and what I chose was their universal origin, physical characteristics, belief system, cosmic agenda, technology, consciousness ability, and their dimensional capacity. So anyway, I forgot the question. What was, the 82.
Yeah, the 82.
That's it. The 82. Thank you.
Gotcha.
I did a sideline there. So so I was online and I was listening to a Paul Hellyer talk, right? Former Canadian Minister of Defense. And towards the end of his life, he said that he knew of 82 races that were visiting Earth. And I said, well, I'm going to try and fit 82 races into the book to honor Paul Hellyer, right? And so I was just able to squeeze it in. In the back of the book, I always put in, there's a whole section on all of the conscious races, all of their craft, motherships, starships, plasma ships, thought ships, etc., so that it's not repeated throughout. The only thing that's different, they all share technology, they share everything, there is no secrets. And so the only thing that's different is they like to make their own shapes and things and designs of that nature. And then we have another worldly terminology of some of the things that people might not understand, and some of the cosmic laws. So
Now, how
So
many of
that
these species would you say are any of them non-physical?
Well, the one where I was on a investigation, and the abductee was taking me around to first down by the Cape Fear River where it happened with several people. And then when he returned home and his, back there in the Midwest, most people's backyard is forest, right? And when I go back there and I see somebody's backyard literally that you could walk to in 5 minutes, I think, is a Bigfoot going to walk out of that forest? Because, they're spotted all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So he was taking me back because he said once he got in his car and came home, that they started walking out of the forest and he ran into the house. So as he's telling me this, we're standing just on the outside of the forest, and I have my Minolta camera and I'm flashing pictures, and I caught one of them on camera in a silhouette, and its legs started where our knees start. It had an extremely long torso. It was at least 6 foot, thick torso too, skinny neck, oval head. And then when we lightened up the picture, we could see more of the facial features, and it was wearing goggles and it was holding a light source like this in its hand. And I immediately looked at that light source and I said, that's an interdimensional light source. And I immediately felt that the goggles it was wearing were also interdimensional for them to see that way, like we use night vision binoculars, right?
Yeah.
And when I showed it, I didn't even know I caught it until the next morning in the hotel room when I was flicking through the digitals, right? And I went, oh my God. And there's also another friend of ours who was filming everything, and right behind her, there was this giant light, and out of the light were human fingers coming out of it, right?
Yeah.
So, and then the very next photograph that I took was nothing coming from all down from the trees were long wisps of plasma. And he told me every time he catches one of them on camera, that the next photograph is always plasma. So there has to be a connection of how they travel interdimensionally that leaves this sort of plasma imprint.
That's super interesting. I was just speaking with someone that says that the energy and I guess plasma, whatever they're using to get between dimensions to manifest into this reality, that sometimes the places that they're doing it, it could like cause some other paranormal activity or electromagnetic kind of anomalies or strange things to occur because of the massive amount of whatever type of energy they're using to pop in and out of that reality. So that is super fascinating. They may be physical beings somewhere, but they're
yes,
they know how to manipulate their biology to do this.
And what's interesting about it is when this was occurring, of course, he was terrified and didn't understand it. But as with most abductees, came to understand that it was meant to be and that they weren't there to harm him. They were there to help him. But I think there was maybe some other nefarious things that maybe they were protecting him from, right? But the inside of their house became a paranormal house of activity. Yeah. And in the husband and wife's bedroom, especially in the closet going up into the attic, was like dark energy. They were so freaked out by it, they abandoned that house. And so when I was there, he said, "Do you want to see in the house?" After he told me that, and I said, "No, I'm good." So so of course we go back, and then he has 4 kids. They're all grown now, and they were grown when I was there, like maybe 2015 to 17, somewhere in there. And they were like, "No, let's go back. We want to go back with Craig." And so his wife came and the 4 kids. And so they were all telling me their incredible stories. And they're like, "Okay, let's go in the house." And I'm like, "No, I don't want to go in the house." But then everyone went in the house, and I'm like, "Okay, do I stay in the backyard with not knowing what's going to come walking out of the forest, or do I go in the house?" I was like, "Okay, I'll go in the house." So
Yeah.
anyway,
Man.
but you could definitely feel that there was something dark in there, and it had nothing to do with the ET energy, right? So I don't know I don't know what opened up there or how that worked. It's fascinating. I can't wait till we can figure these types of things out.
It's like a science we just don't understand yet.
We don't. We really don't. But maybe it's because they're coming through interdimensionally, and maybe it opens up a portal for other energies.
That's what I'm thinking.
That would be the only explanation I can think of.
Yeah, that is super fascinating.
Right.
Now, you sent me something very interesting in the email that you recently found your biological father and found out he was in the Air Force.
Yes. Yeah. So
wow.
when I got the assignment to write this book, my mom told me when I was 12 that my dad adopted me when I was 1, when they got married. And she told me about my biological father. They had a brief encounter on Earth, maybe, I don't know if it was a couple of weeks, a month, a couple of months, something like that. Something happened. My mother shut him down, and that was it. Right. So she had me, and she brought me up, in a time where everyone called her every name in the book, right? For having a child out of wedlock. And thank God she kept me, because everyone was telling her to give me away. And she was the best mom. I mean, the best. And so long story short, I'm writing the book. I get a call from a genealogist up in Canada. And she says, "Hey, I'm like your 4th or 5th cousin. I'm a real genealogist. I'm looking for information on your mother's father. That's how we're related." And I said, "Oh, cool." So I gave it to her. And I said, "Hey, can you find my biological father? I've tried to do it on the internet. I can't do it." I said, "I just come up with dead ends." She goes, "Yeah, I can do it." So I had already done my DNA testing to see what nationalities I was from his side. All I knew was Austrian German from my mom, right? So anyway, so I had done that. So she was able to use that as well. She came back to me and she goes, "Well, I found him. He did pass away in 2006, but this is where he's buried." So I went to the cemetery the next day, went to the front desk, and I said, "Hey, when Fred was brought in, who called? Do you guys have a name in your system?" And she goes, "Let me look." And she goes, "Yeah, I do. It was a different last name than his." And she said, "But I don't have any other info." I came home, looked the guy up. All it had was his name and address, and the man lived around the corner from me, of all things. And he was 74 years old, right? So I thought, okay, well, that would have been right, contemporary age for friends. I wrote him a letter, put my picture in there, said, "If you know anybody, any of his family members, please forward this letter." 2 days later, I got a call from this guy's son, and he said, "My dad got your letter." And I said, "Oh, is your dad friends with Fred?" And he said, "No, he's actually his brother." And I went, "Oh." I said, "So you're my cousin?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Usually you get a letter like this, you're a little leery, but you look just like him." And I said, well, it was done through DNA, so I know for sure.
Yeah.
Right. So I went and I met them for dinner. And to make a whole long story short, an hour into the dinner, my uncle looks at me, they're just telling me all about his life. And he said, well, before he was 18, he really he always wanted to fly planes and be in the Air Force. And he begged our mother to sign a piece of paper to allow him to go into the Air Guard, I think at age 17. So he went into the Air Guard. They put him in the Air Force at age 18. He moved up pretty quick. I think he said he was a major sergeant within a few years, like 5 stripes. I'm not sure if that's right, but and he said, oh, hey, by the way, you know what? He was in that Project Blue book. That's just what I did.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
He was in that Project Blue book. And I went, are you kidding me? He goes, no. And I said, well, what did he do? He said, we don't know. He would never talk. I just met my other cousin. My uncle has three sons. I see my uncle and aunt all the time because they live around the corner. So the other son lives in a different state. So he flew in, and I finally met him a couple weeks ago. I was like, well, what did you guys do? I mean, you and your other brother, you're both trying to dig it out of him. And he goes, basically all he would say was, yeah, it's been known that things have been seen in the sky from time to time. He would like generalize it like that.
Yeah.
And I said, well, he was really good at keeping secrets because he never told you guys about me.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And they were like, I know. And my uncle's like, God, I'm just so mad at him. But he goes, but I'm so glad that we have you. This is like the best news ever. And I'm like, I know. This is like the other part of my family that I've been wanting to just know, and they're all great and incredible and all of that. So I just thought that it was fascinating that he worked for the government agency that investigated UFOs to see if they were, a menace to society.
Yeah.
I'm writing books for MUFON, right? That basically goes through the whole thing, a nonprofit, comprised of civilians that study reported UFO sightings. And then the similarities didn't end there. I've been in the film business since I was 15, and I started off acting. I went in behind the scenes. I worked on Dune and Conan the Destroyer simultaneously with the same producer for a 4-year period. Went on and then started my casting career on Steven Spielberg's Amazing Stories, and been doing casting for over 30 years, and now writing, producing, and directing as well. So when he left the Air Force and came back here, he ends up becoming the head of construction at Warner Brothers, building sets for movies and television, right? So he's in the film business, and he leaves Warner Brothers at a certain point, opens up his own scenic shop. He designs and builds sets for the Hollywood Bowl and for concerts like Elton John, Michael Jackson, Neil Diamond, Alice Cooper, and I'm just like, this is like crazy. And my uncle said, oh yeah, he even did that Bing Crosby special with David Bowie.
Wow.
And I'm like, God, I said, I missed out going to all this stuff, But I do have a stepbrother and 2 stepsister who did get to go do all that stuff. So I got to hear all the fun from them, and they gave me all their pictures, and, they thought going to the Alice Cooper concert was the best. So I got all the Alice Cooper pictures. So,
man, that is some hell of some synchronicities there.
I know, right?
Yeah.
my body's like chilling every time I tell the story. My body chills.
Yeah, that's a really great story. You
Yeah,
just mentioned that you worked on the original Dune.
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what you thought of the new one. Now, what did you do on the original Dune?
Well, the original Dune, I was literally out of high school. So I got a job as a production office assistant. And so I basically did whatever was needed,
Ah,
right?
gotcha. Yeah.
And I got to learn from all the departments because I would go around and, do different things and that kind of thing. I mean, you know, towards the end when we were in post production, I used to go sit. Toto had a house where they had their recording studio. So I got to go and sit with Toto while they were recording because the minute they finished, I had to bring it to David to listen to.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's cool.
that I remember was very cool.
Yeah.
But I worked on it for 4 years, and that's where I really learned all about filmmaking and everything. As a matter of fact, they did a documentary that is going to be released this year, this month on iTunes, which they interviewed me for 3 hours, and they interviewed other people behind the scenes to get a clearer picture of what happened on set, right?
Yeah.
So that should be out at some point. It didn't make it onto the new 4K DVD, which is out. But I I really loved our version, but I knew all of the things that they could not do, right? They could not do the special effects. We weren't there. We had Star Wars, and at first, John Dykstra was on our production, who did Star Wars. And then something happened between him and the producer, and he was gone. And then it ended up going to a lesser house because I think it was just too expensive to execute. And so you'll see some scenes that are Ron Miller's airbrushed paintings of what it looked like on Caladan or on Arrakis or something like that. I mean, one of the little ornithopters, not an ornithopter, it was another one. It was like a block of wood spray painted gold, and they just flew it across the screen. Every time I see that in the movie, I just cringe. I'm like, how could you do that? But
Oh,
the performances are like just so good and all of that. And but I was so excited to see this version. And I went to an early screening at Warner Brothers where Denis Villeneuve, the director, was there and talked afterwards. And he was able to execute it, I believe, in a whole entirely different way that made sense. He laid out the plan. I had no idea when I saw the film it was going to end with Paul and Jessica entering the Fremen world, which I thought, oh, that is so great. Now we get to see a whole second half of really what happened with the Fremen, because that's what got cut out of our version because it was too long. So anyway, that was really, really just amazing to see what he did with it. Everyone in his Dune, it's more internal performances, right? Where in David's version, it's not that it was really external, but there was a little more, emotion.
Yeah,
And
unfortunately, I was not able to see the whole second version. I saw about half of it a couple of weeks ago, but I've been so extremely busy. I've been unable to finish it. But from what I saw, it was excellent. I can't wait to finish the rest.
It's great.
And definitely saw the original. So yeah, I know what the comparisons you're making, and I completely understand that. But that's really cool, man. You got to kind of be a part of that first one and then experience the second one and speak with the director. So that's really great. I want to talk about the photos of extraterrestrials that you
Oh
have
yeah.
photos of extraterrestrials. Is that right?
I'm gonna show you one. This is in the book, but you're not gonna see it in color.
Okay,
This
I see it. Yep.
this is a clarion being.
Wow.
Her name
Beautiful.
is, yeah. Look at, like, see if I can get that glare off there. But look at the petite features,
Hmm.
right? Her name is Nelfa, and she deals with astrobiology and chronoastronomy. She actually deals with the energies between dimensions because they travel between dimensions all
Now,
the time.
is there any background on how you obtained this photo that you could tell us?
Yes, through Maurizio Cavallo, who is the contactee in Italy. And in the book, there's another photo of a clarion male whose name is Sewell. And they have been coming back and forth, the clarion race, to planet Earth for quite some time. And Sewell, I believe, lives here. I think there's a large group of them that live in Italy. And they explain that they are here because having their presence, because they are fully conscious beings, right? And what a fully conscious being is because I just mentioned their name, their telepathic ears could go right to my voice and be listening to us right now. That's how fully conscious they are, right?
Yeah.
So, and they explain that just by being here on the planet, it really helps to raise the consciousness up even more, because once we get to a point where we all become fully conscious and we start using our heart to rule our mind, right? And start doing everything through love and not being in reactionary emotions, now mastering our emotions and understanding that every being is just as important as we are. And if we're in conflict, to take the time to step away and come together and to talk through it without anger. But the amazing thing about fully conscious beings, they are so concerned about the other person's feelings, right? Where here, as somebody gets angry and they just keep throwing dirt and daggers and all kinds of stuff at them. It's the exact opposite there. So they're extremely powerful, and it coming up like there. So in the back of the book, by the way, for anyone who wants to get it, I have under further reading. So if you really like the clarions, you could go there and see that it was from Maurizio Cavallo's book. I think it was Become Beyond the Light Barrier or something like that. And it would have where you could go to a website and learn more about him, or to his Facebook page, and where you could buy the book on Amazon, his book, right?
Right.
And so that's where the clarions came from. Of course, under created beings in the book, I have Valiant Thor's photo that was taken way back in 1958 by a retired Air Force photographer. That's a whole nother thing. That's the posters behind me, the short film I made right there, Stranger at the Pentagon. That is Val Thor's craft. This is deck 1, deck 2, the blueprints to it. So if anybody's interested in that story, they can go to strangeratthepentagon.com, and posters and the books and everything is there if people are interested. And you could watch a short film there, or you could watch it on Amazon Prime.
Very cool.
As well, yeah.
Now, based on what you've learned in the research you've done, do you think that most of these races that have interactions or interests with the human race are benevolent and have positive agendas for us?
Yes, the majority are all benevolent. There are some neutral races, and then there's some negative races and aggressive races as well.
Yeah.
And so the beings of the higher echelon, like the Valiant Thors, Valiant Thor is basically what I would call a seraphim, right? High angelic order. He doesn't have a belly button. He's a created being. There are other created beings. There's another created being on his craft whose name is Yanaya, and he's also a Melchizedek master from the University of Melchizedek as well. And what's interesting for people to know is a lot of the old consciousnesses on our world, Lemuria, that came here a long, long time ago. I have it written down. I just can't think of the number. But they came here and they were living all across California, right? The Atlanteans, which were Syrians, came maybe tens of thousands of years later. They set up shop, right? And so this is supposed to be a world where all beings could live in peace and harmony. And then whatever factors happened, the Lemurians went underground and they live below, they live in Telos. Actually, when they lived on the top of the land, it was called Telos, the whole land, which was a lot of across California. And then they went underground. So a lot of the ancient civilizations that went underground now are the embodiment of Agartha, right? So the Atlanteans are in Posid, which is beneath the Mato Grosso. And so in all of these major cities, they all have a high priest or a high priestess from Melchizedek, because this is the school of mastery in the universe. And they are the teachers that teach their little pockets of their population in their cities, right? So it's very fascinating to understand that some people went down into Telos and met the high priest named Adama, and the high priestess is Terra Ra. Many years ago, a book that was written over 100 years ago called The Smoky God, a man and his son were in a boat and they got somehow into the opening near, there's an opening at the top of the earth and an opening at the bottom of the earth. Dr. Frank Strangers gave me the pictures that were taken from outer space of these openings. Mm-hmm. And they got in there and they ended up going into one of the civilizations. Everyone down there are tall, they're giants. Not like, like a skyscraper, but they're all extremely tall. 8 feet to 15 feet is their, wow. Yeah. So they ended up living down there for over 2 years. And when they would go to the different towns, they would always meet the high priest. So it's just fascinating that, in a lot of material throughout, it does talk about that kind of thing. And I really think that's the first thing that people are going to read in the book is about the Agarthans. I think they're going to find it very fascinating.
That is super fascinating.
Yeah.
Now we've got a few minutes left. I'd love for you to tell us about what your new documentary is going to be all about.
Oh, yeah. So the documentary, the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, we're going to just right now call it the documentary. And so it's an extension of the book. So everyone's going to get to see the real contactees, the hybrids, the big professionals that aren't seen in every documentary that you see, right? I wanted to make this documentary different. I didn't want it to be where it was all the same players in every documentary talking about the same stuff. So this is going to be an extension of the book where you're going to get a lot more information coming from the mouths of the people who lived it, right? And then what we're doing is like, as I've been in the film business my whole life, we're going to create and bring the extraterrestrials to life through computer generated images or CGI. So before I embarked on this, we've already done all our interviews. We're in editing now, and then we're going to start going into CGI. I had raised the money for the documentary. And then as I started getting in the quotes for the CGI, I was like, oh, wow, we're going to need quite a chunk of change more. So anyway, I started a GoFundMe. When I did Stranger, all the people that wanted to see that come to life, because it was the very first movie ever made of a star person, a real live star person, right? Valiant Thor. So everyone came and helped us there, and we all work for free, and I'm working for free on this one as well. And so it's just one of those things. So if anybody wants to help us out, you'll post the link there, and
yeah, for sure.
Even $5, I mean, just anything, because of lots of people are doing that. And then there's also the link if people want to buy the book and want me to autograph it to them, or if they want to buy it as a gift for somebody, just tell me who to make it out to, and that kind of thing. So
very good.
Yeah.
Man, that's going to be great. We're looking forward to it. Now, before you go, I want to get your thoughts on what could possibly be our future when it comes to our relationship with these beings, with these extraterrestrials. There is an awakening process going on where many people that haven't had experiences are now they're more interested in it. They're seeking out some things that's not in their comfort zone. They want to know more about the nature of reality. A lot of people that I'm speaking with. So we're entering very interesting times. Our own government keeps kind of throwing out there this disclosure narrative and reeling it back in and throwing it out and reeling it back in. We've had some interesting documents come out declassified recently. Of course, since 2017, they had the Tic Tac video from the New York Times, and a lot of excitement that we haven't seen. But of course, they keep reeling it back, and I'm not sure what they were trying to do with this. But what do you think about our future when it comes to this? Do you think maybe within our lifetime, it would be a normal thing to have contact with these beings like it seems we did in our ancient past?
Yeah, absolutely. Remember, the reason for these consciousness raising programs, as I was telling you, like from the Autobiography of an Extraterrestrial Saga book series, is once the planet merges in its consciousness and moves upward, then we rejoin universal society. And it's going to be a slowly gradual process. And when people start getting used to the idea, just like people are going up with Jeff Bezos up into space, there might be some people picked here to go up on, saucer craft or extraterrestrial craft or things like that. So that I would elect to do for sure. But I think everybody needs to believe, don't read into the negative alien stuff that they're coming here to rape and pillage us and that kind of stuff, because a part of the Tic Tac video was that they're a threat, right? And nothing showed that they were a threat in there, right? There are more benevolent extraterrestrials here helping, but we have to move through the process because we're here as souls in a planetary school learning duality, and we have to move through the duality and we have to do the work because in the end, our soul will have more notches in our diamond coal in our hearts, right? That's how we all gain it, because the real reality is when we go home, right? So this is sort of like the thing. I mean, I used to remember I was friends with Sylvia Brown, and she would say, honey, this is hell, that is heaven there. And then other people would say, we're on a prison planet, we're here, we're this. But the one thing that I remember the most, and this is not the only time I've heard it, but Roger Ebert, who was the film critic, his wife was by his deathbed and he died. And she was holding his hand, and he came back and he looked at her and he goes, this is all a lie. And then he went back to death.
Wow.
Right.
Man.
So just look at it like you're in school and you have to graduate. You can't fall back. Right.
Yeah, you don't want to come back again.
Yeah.
Definitely. Craig, man, that was great. Thanks again for coming on. And I definitely want to get you back on soon, possibly after your documentary.
Yes, absolutely. Thank
That'd
you.
be
I would
great.
love that. I would love that. Thanks for having me on today.
Awesome. Well, until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. And we will actually have a bonus show for you tomorrow. So we will talk again then.